judge of truth. And with that, we move into our ceremony this day. Three parts ourselves for the hard work of saying goodbye. The second thing that we do is tell the story of a person's life, a story that we can't tell until this moment when we see that life as a whole. And the third thing that we do is say goodbye to their physical presence. And so as we prepare ourselves for this work, we use psalms and poems from our tradition that help us to understand what we are doing. And so we begin with a poem called The Sacred Pilgrimage. Birth is the beginning and death the destination, and life is a journey from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness and loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude and pain to compassion, from grief to understanding and fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, and life is a journey, that sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. And when I hear the stories of people who grew here and lived here and spent their lives here in Denver, as Barbara did, almost in the same neighborhood for so much of her life, we know that one of the things that roots us when we are rooted here is the mountains. We always know, us Denverites, which way we're facing. And that is certainly a quite literal truth, right? We know where the mountains are. But it's also a metaphorical one, that we have a sense of that smallness next to those mountains that helps us understand the world a little bit, I think, when we get to understand our direction in life based on something so big and so magnificent. And for Barbara, who grew up over by the Wash Park DU area and was there for so much of her life, you can see the mountains from there. And actually, I can't usually from inside this beautiful cemetery, but right now I can see the mountains through just a little hole. There's like a tiny bit of gap. And so we say together as we prepare ourselves today the words of Psalm 121. And the words at the beginning of the psalm are, "From where will my help come?" And the psalm says, "I turn my eyes, I lift my eyes to the mountain, and I see there what is bigger than me." And so we recite the words of Psalm 121. Shir lama'alo esa einai el heharim me'ain yavo Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim ba'aretz al yiten lamo raglecha al yanum shomrecha hine lo yanum lo yishan shomer Yisrael Adonai shomrecha Adonai tzilcha al yad yaminecha yomam hashemesh lo yakeka yareach balayla Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra yishmor et nafshecha Adonai yishmor tzitecha ugolecha me'ata ve'ad olam. A song for ascent. I turn my eyes to the mountains. From where will my help come? My help comes from God, maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. See, Adonai is the guardian of the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. Adonai is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. By day the sun will not strike you, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your life. God will guard your going and your coming now and forever. And so we recite one more psalm as we prepare ourselves for this work, this hard work today. This one, Psalm 23. And what we know about Psalm 23 is that it is relevant in a lot of faith traditions at this moment. It has the line, as I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. And we often think that that line is about our loved ones who are deceased, that they are the ones that are walking in the valley of the shadow of death. And some of our sages teach a different interpretation, that in fact, it's not at all about those who have died being in the valley of the shadow of death. It's us. When we have lost someone and we are sad, we are in the valley and right, that's a low point, and we feel the shadow. And we know that there is only a shadow when there is light, and that Barbara brought a lot of light into the world, light of color and beauty and art and love and kindness and friendship and love of family. And so we are shadowed from that at this moment in our grief. And we know that as we walk through, we don't stay in that valley forever. We get to reap the gifts and the benefits of that light for a very long time, even when we can't quite see them. Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai Ro'ilo, Echsar, Bino Teshayar, B'Tzeini, Almeinu Kodiana, Haleini, Nafshi Yeshove, Yan Haini B'Magale Tzedek Leman Shemo, Tam Ki Elech Begeit, Almavet Lo Irara, Ki Ata Imadi, Shitzecha Mishantecha, Kema Yena Chamuni, Ha'araf Lefanai Shulchan Neged Tzorai, Shanta Beshem and Roshi, Sosi Revaya, Achto Beka Seir Defuni, Hoyame Hayai, Veshavti Bebek Adonai, Leorech Yami. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. God, you lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. And even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely, goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. And so with that, we get to tell the story of Barbara's life. And it's a beautiful and long and really loving story. And before we tell it, I have to tell you a story to tell you the story. There is a story that goes about the death, actually, of Michelangelo, a different artist, a famous artist, and the people of Rome, who spoke about Michelangelo as having 4 souls because he had these 4 different skill sets: architecture, sculpture, painting, and poetry. And it was his skill and vision that had produced so much of the beauty in Rome. And at the end of his life, when Michelangelo was about to die, his friends all gathered at his bedside, and they were devastated. They were torn apart by the idea of a world without him. And one of his friends cried out, "Michelangelo, how will Rome ever get along without you?" And Michelangelo pointed out the window next to his bed at the city beyond and said, "Rome will never be without you," because we know that the city was filled with the works of his creation and his brilliance. And so what a story to tell, to think about how we understand the loss of Barbara on this day. And as an artist herself, a great artist, we know that we are not without her in this world, without her creation and all of those things that she has left for us. And the idea that 4 souls exist sometimes, and 4 pieces of an identity that help us to remember her. And so we are going to talk about the 4 souls, as I heard them, of Barbara. And the first of her souls that I think she is leaving us with, the beauty of which is evident certainly in you, is her kindness and positivity. When I asked for adjectives that define her, adjectives that describe her, The adjectives that Darcy and Lisa said were sweet-tempered and kind and loving and loyal and a good sense of humor and sweet and happy and with a wonderful laugh and smiling. Even at the end when she was not all present mentally, she was still sweet and kind. There was some debate about whether she ever complained, but as we know, we're moving into fall, and often I think she was cold, and so there was some complaining. We can clarify that, but good natured. And so it is that sweetness, the kindness that helps us to begin. As a lifelong resident of Denver, Barbara grew up on South Gaylord, where her father, who was an immigrant from Eastern Europe, had a drugstore. And we know that it was a social center for that neighborhood. And with her parents, she lived over the drugstore. And that is where she made the foundations of her life, graduating from South High School, getting a bachelor's in fine arts from Denver, from the University of Denver. After which she taught briefly in a junior high. And in 1947, she married Dan, also an artist. Early in their marriage, they began to live a life of adventure. They began to travel. They began to see the world through their lens of art. They started the Spivak Art Supply Company in 1952 in downtown Denver, in Cherry Creek, in Boulder. And the second of the stores that defined Barbara's life came into creation. And so we know the joy and the happiness and the rootedness that Barbara took from the beginning of her life that allowed her to live a life full of such warmth and positivity. I think the second of her souls, the second thing that we get to learn from her and take from her is her sense of partnership and participation. And I don't think that you used these words, but it was such a theme of her story running through her life that her childhood revolved around the drugstore, living above it, working in it, taking that role in the neighborhood and in the family seriously, participating in it. And so first in the drugstore and then later at the art supply store, Barbara was present, was participatory, was a constant, even though neither of the stores was her sole responsibility. She spent a lot of time working, bookkeeping, manning the counter, and being present at these stores in such contribution. The other story that I heard that helps me understand her partnership mentality was about Dan's health. And as I understand about a rheumatic fever, as a kid left him with a heart condition that sort of informed almost every decision that was made in his life. Playing tennis and the game changing from getting the ball not out, but to Dan was the goal so that he didn't have to run. They informed their travel. Even as we sit at the base of those mountains, we know they didn't spend a lot of time up in the mountains for fear of the altitude. And taking care of him and building a life that was loving and happy and adventurous and fulfilled around that required a whole lot of partnership and participation and buy-in, from creating a low-salt diet to making sure that he was well taken care of. And we know that that partnership and participation informed the later years of her life after Dan passed. And she wanted to not be alone in her house. And so building a new kind of partnership and participation at Brookdale, living with a different kind of support that I know she had to adjust to so that she could be with people who would care for her. And certainly participating in the Jewish community. Well, the sense of belonging and identity was a really important part of who she was also. Participation and belonging and being a part of something. Her third soul, the soul of art. Can't forget that one. And so we know that art was a huge part of Barbara's life, that they first sold all of these art supplies, that was such a core of their life. But she was a talented artist in her own right. She worked in watercolors and oils and ceramics and photography and printmaking. She had galleries in the area that displayed her work. There was a piece in the Rocky Mountain News. And her early work, I think, as I understand, was exactly this demonstration of her love of the people around her, chronicling those people, delving into other cultures, demonstrating the beauty of what she saw as she traveled in the world, people and environment, animals and plants. And part of what I understand she loved so much was the exploration of art, trying new media, traveling, seeing new things. Anytime there was something that was visually interesting, she was off on a tangent. After lizards and birds and totem poles and architecture and whatever kinds of plants she would see wherever she was immersed. And I heard a story that other kids would come home from school and their house would smell like cookies, and Barbara's house smelled like turpentine. And it wasn't a bad smell. But that also goes back to our solo participation, that the girls had to pose for her all the time. They're very good, I understand, at sitting still. And her final soul, the soul of her love for her friends and her family. From her family growing up, to the family that she created, to the family that is a product of the friendships that she made. We know that the identity she will be remembered most by is that of being a kind and loving and loyal daughter and wife and mother and grandmother and great-grandmother and cousin and friend. And that it was her interactions with people, her curiosity about the people that she loved, that transformed them either in art or in life into these beautiful and intriguing images that she painted for all of us. And when she met Dan, we know that there was a whole network of the cousins that were married to each other, that were how she ended up with Dan and was introduced. Maybe she met at their wedding, hard to say, but certainly through Dan's oldest brother and some distant cousin of Barbara's. And 60 years later, they had this beautiful marriage and life. And we know that as a mom, she was described as busy and invested and not particularly strict, but also helping them be strong and holding her ground when she needed to. And my favorite line that you told me is, if you were bored and you told her, she'd say, go make something. I love. But she was supportive and loving. And as a grandma, she was indulgent and loving and worth spending time here, worth having vacations spent in Denver, worth making time for, because she loved back just as hard. And so you know that her family and her friends were the most important thing. That Dan and his two brothers and their wives, the six of them, were a unit for so long as she built her family around her children, her grandchildren, the great-grandchildren that she had the opportunity to briefly meet, and the friends that she surrounded herself with. And so those are four magnificent souls that we have to learn from. And so when you think, I can't imagine a world without Barbara, you just look out the window, much like Michelangelo's friends did in Rome, and know that you will never be without her, because the beauty of her creation and the creation of her souls and her brilliance and her love is all around you and will be for a very long time. And so we move now into the hard work of saying goodbye to Barbara's physical presence here. It's really hard and it breaks our hearts, and yet we know that it is one of the most important things that we can do for her to return that love. Adonai Natan Adonai Laka Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Tivo, Dehlita Sambati, Benata Betosa Samkaye, Oba, Barfata Adonai, Dayan Amen. I get to invite you now to participate in what I think is one of the most beautiful and the most difficult traditions that we have in Judaism, and that is that we help to fill the grave of our loved ones with earth. Now, there's a lot about this that is painful for us. It's hard to participate in that. It makes it feel unbelievably final. It hurts physically. It sounds painful when we hear that earth hitting the grave. But for a daughter and a wife and a mother and a grandmother and a great grandmother and a friend who we know spent a lot of time taking care of people that she loved, one of the most beautiful ways to think about this is as a return of that gift. And my guess is that through the course of her life, she tucked a lot of people in to bed. That's what moms do and grandmas do. They tuck their babies into bed and make sure that they are safe and loved and warm and peaceful at night. And we get to do that now to make sure that she is safe in this place and peaceful and loved. And so we participate physically in making sure that happens. It is the one thing that she cannot say thank you to us for. So I'm going to invite up first her children and then family and then anybody else that wants to participate. Let me tell you 3 things about this tradition. Number 1, we often, when we use the shovel, will do the first shovelful of dirt with the back of the shovel. Let me tell you, it is ineffective. It's very hard to shovel with an upside down shovel, which is on purpose. It's very hard to do this, and it breaks our hearts. It's not about being effective. It is about acknowledging the importance of what we are doing. Number 2, when we are done shoveling, we put the shovel back into the earth rather than handing it to another person, because we don't have to transfer our mourning to anybody else. Everybody gets to feel in this moment exactly how they need to feel. You don't have to take on anybody else's experience or pain. And number 3, you're not obligated to participate. Anybody who doesn't feel comfortable doesn't have to. If you would prefer to just take a little bit of the earth in your hand, you may do that as well, or whatever feels comfortable to you. And when we get through with people who want to participate, our helpers will help us to get our grave where we need it to be in order to conclude our service. And so we certainly have to set you up to begin. rise as we are able for our memorial prayer. Say menucha nefonata chatan pe'ashtina. Im perashim u'tevarim v'zohar barak yama. And Yishma Yisirei Shehokal Yolama. Bala Rachamim Yasireha B'seter Knafav Le'olam. Yitzror Chaim Ad Yishmata. Adonai Munachalata. V'tanuach V'shalom Al Mishkava. God of abundant mercy, God most high, may the soul of our loved one who has gone into eternity find gift of perfect peace in your grace, together with the holy and pure whose light shines like the radiance of heaven. Compassionate God, hold her close to you forever, so that her soul may be bound up in the bond of life eternal. May she find a home with you, and may she rest in peace. And together we say, we have one more prayer that we say in this moment. The morning Kaddish, our prayer of memory that we say so many times throughout the years of our lives as we think of those that we have lost. A prayer that doesn't ever talk about death, actually, but it talks about the beauty of life and all of the things that we are taking with us from this woman and from her story and from her legacy and from this day. Even as our pain as well, we know that we still have much to learn from her. And so I invite you to join with me for the morning's Kaddish. Yitzgadal, Yitzgarash, Shemei Rabba, Be'amad, Yivra, Yirutei, Be'amlis, Maslutei, B'chayefon, B'yomefon, B'chayei, B'chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, Ubizman, Karib, B'imril, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevorach Leolam Leame Amaya. Yitarach V'yishtabach V'yita'ar V'yitamach V'yitaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitalal Shemei Kudusha B'risu Le'ela Minkol Yerchata V'shirata Tushbachata V'nechamata Ta'amiran Me'alma V'yimril Amen. Yehei Shalom Rabba Min Shemaya. Chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru Amen. Oseh Shalom Imama. Uya Aseh Shalom. Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael V'yimru Amen. May the one who makes peace on high make peace for us and for all of us as we stay together. Amen. Go your way, for God has called you. Go your way, may God be with you. May your righteousness go before you, glory of God receive you.